นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings. It's the last day of the retreat, the last day of 2021. Always, I think these occasions it's good to remind ourselves of our good fortune. The Buddha said it's our good fortune that we've been born as a human being. And in this case, that we're healthy enough, strong enough to attend a retreat, listen to Dhamma, meditate, and hear the teachings. And that's our great good fortune, that the Buddhist teachings are still with us today in the world. And through technology and travel, we can now access them all over the world. Quite amazing. It's one of the good sides of technology, even though there are many dangers and obstacles using technology. It can be a great source of spreading the Dhamma. Yesterday I was talking to a lady who helps make Buddha statues in Thailand. She just sent a Buddha statue to Uganda, in the center of Africa, where Venerable Buddha Rakita lives, and has a monastery there, and all the difficulties of arranging transport for the Buddha statue made in Thailand and then sent, this time by air. Last time they sent by ship and truck and had a lot of problems, so this time they sent directly by air to Kampala airport. So now Buddha statues are being made and placed in places of honor and worship all over the world, literally. Every continent of the world. Maybe not Antarctica yet, that's something to come. But this is our great good fortune, it's something to reflect on, that we have this opportunity to practice. Every day we hear of the world's problems. We have no doubt that the world is full of suffering and problems. And even our own minds tend to dwell on what is negative and wrong in our lives, and our health and our work and our family and our money problems and this problem and that problem. That seems to be the kind of default way of a human mind. So sometimes we have to uplift ourselves by remembering and appreciating the good fortune that we have. At New Year's time we often say good luck or wish you well or something. Well, that is our good fortune. So when you wish somebody else good fortune, you really are wishing them to preserve their opportunity to hear Dhamma and practice the Dhamma. And to meet with good teachers, Kalyana Mitta, who can show us the way, remind us the way, instruct us in the way to practice. Again, our great good fortune. Ajahn Chah used to say the human mind, if you leave it undeveloped, untouched, it just flows downhill like water. It's because we have this great good fortune that we have the opportunity to practice and train ourselves and develop this mind in a good way and use it in a good way to bring up wholesome Dhammas, to develop the path. If we neglect that, then it tends to just go downhill. And so we do tend towards the negative, the worries and fears, the attachments, the obsessions, the addictions, the irritation, the aversion, even the hatred. It's just natural for the untrained mind to do that. So the untrained mind actually gravitates towards dukkha, suffering. The Buddha said, Jitang dangtang sukhavahang, the well-trained mind brings happiness. One of the challenges of the practice is that because technology and communication and travel has improved so much over the last 50 years, we're bombarded with different choices and opportunities and information, worldviews in every form, not just Buddhism, but everything else as well. And we have to navigate our way through that, which is why coming to practice the Dhamma when you have the opportunity on a retreat is so valuable, because that is navigating through the ocean of samsara, all the views, all the different things that people in this world do. We need to come back to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha over and over again, every day really, and make it the center of our life, because there's so much else that draws away our attention, demands our attention, confuses us, causes suffering, leads our mind to get lost in mental states that cause suffering. And we need to keep returning to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, whether we're at home or anywhere else. So a retreat is an ideal situation to practice. Even when it's a retreat you've set up at home, you've got the teachings coming to you, and hopefully you've set up your room, your place, and everyone around you. If you've got others living with you, they know that it's your retreat time, so hopefully they leave you alone. You got your ideal time to practice and really absorb into the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. And we're making that external refuge the starting point. The statues, the chanting, the bowing, the words, the suttas. And we're bringing them in to become an internal refuge. And that's not to disparage the external refuge, because we need that, especially in the beginning when our mind is weak, wobbly, and we are not fully confident in our practice. We need external things as much as we need internal things. But the aim is to internalize the Dhamma, bring it in through the practice. So then you have an internal refuge that will be with you all the time, at any moment of day and night, because life is uncertain. You need to have that refuge there that you can return to for stability. That's what a refuge is. Here in Australia it's the fire season, so every village or locality has its fire refuge, safe refuge. We're sitting in ours. We made our meditation hall our fire refuge. So we can sit inside this hall if a bushfire comes, with the Buddha, with double brick walls, with concrete in between them and steel roof frame. We got the best we can. No building is impregnable, or every building can burn or collapse. But we got the best building in the monastery ready. So we're already here in our refuge. And we have to develop our inner refuge for the fires of suffering in the world, the kilesas, in the same way. So the more we dedicate ourselves to practicing the path, sila, samadhi, panya, mindfulness, and practice with patience, particularly, so being willing to face the frustrations of the mind and the obstacles, the more we are returning and cultivating this inner refuge and returning to it, so that it's always ready for the unpredictable things that may arise in life. We really don't know what the world has in store for us, whether it's in our immediate vicinity of our personal life or the wider world. It's hard to predict, and I think most people can realize that at this time because of the pandemic. You really don't know. I mean, now we're getting the news that everybody should be prepared. We're all going to get COVID, and hopefully that means it's just a bad cold or flu, the equivalent. But you don't know, do you? Many people have died from COVID. So when the government says that, you could say, they're just saying, get ready, you might die. Which is true anyways, and we're going to die anyway. Death is always waiting for us anyway, but it doesn't sound very reassuring when they say, well, you're going to get a disease that might kill you. That's why we need an inner refuge. And a real refuge is one that you turn to and it calms the mind and gives you insight into what you're facing. And life is like this. This is the way it is. The world is an unpredictable place. It's impermanent. You really don't know when your loved ones will pass away, when you'll pass away. You don't know what the future brings for certain, but you do know you can turn to your refuge to meet the future. You can use the mindfulness, the wisdom that you're developing to face whatever problems arise. In my life as a monk, I've witnessed that in myself and then other people over and over again, how they've turned to the refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha as a refuge from their own suffering, problems they encounter, and then what's going on around them in the world, in their life. And it works, but you have to practice returning to that refuge, because we get deluded and we forget our refuge, and we forget the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and we forget mindfulness, we forget our meditation object, we forget our precepts, we forget to be generous to other people. All the things that we are listening to and discussing in the practice in the retreat. When you leave the retreat, it's so easy to forget it all, isn't it? But the wise person, the heedful person, continues with their practice, however difficult it is. They just keep going. It's one of Ajahn Chah's favourite phrases: you just keep going, you keep doing it. With our world of technology and structures and information, we love to have plans. We have routines and plans, and we like to know exactly what's going on where and what we're going to do. But life isn't like that, is it? And you can't plan everything and know in advance exactly what's going to happen. All the more reason to have your own refuge to turn to when there's uncertainty, or the fear, the anxiety that arises from uncertainty. We don't know what next year will bring, but at this very moment, we're sitting here meditating, listening to Dhamma, keeping precepts. At this very moment, we can be confident we're generating good karma, following the path and letting go of greed, anger, delusion. If only in small ways and maybe in big ways. Every individual has that opportunity. And that's what we really know, is the present moment, my body, my mind, and the way it is right now. So we use these terms, the way things are or the way it is. Even then we tend to add on our own bias, don't we? So we say, well, that's the way it is for you, but the way it is for me. And then comes our, what we call Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view. My body is like this, yours is like that. My life is like this, yours is like that. And the whole point of the practice is bringing up this quality of mindfulness awareness so you can reflect and go beyond the biases, the attachments. And that's where you start to see the real way that things are. There's the way things are, and then there's the real way things are. And on it goes, as we discuss with each other. Ajahn Chah used to use the term, it's not a being, a person, me, you, us, them. Sakkaya Ditthi, right view, wrong view, the view that these five khandhas are self. It takes everything as a person, takes everything personally. So my body, I like it, I don't like it. It looks good, it looks awful, feels good, feels awful. My body and everything associated with it. My diet, my clothes, my dwelling place, my phone, my this, my that. Feelings exactly the same. My feelings, how I feel about this. You feel one way, I feel another. My feelings, your feelings. It's all a person, isn't it? A being, when there's not the mindfulness and clarity. That's why we get conflicts and competition in the world. The sense of self, self-identity view, comes into everything because it's based on this body and mind, the five khandhas. So as soon as that delusion forms, then it sets up me, you, us, them, grounds for conflict. So we can have conflict just over a different opinion on something. I like it this way, you like it that way, this suits me, that suits you, I'm right, you're wrong. A lot of this will come up as you meditate. The idea is you're finding the inner refuge of mindfulness and developing the reflective power of the mind so that you can face all the self-building, self-creating views that come up. And it will come up as you meditate, you're witnessing it. So the Buddha gave us these tools to investigate. We call the universal characteristics of existence. Universal means they apply universally. You see them, you know them, and notice them everywhere. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self or selfless nature of experience. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. So my view is anicca, dukkha, anatta. Your view is anicca, dukkha, anatta. When we don't see it, the mind falls into the biases because of the clinging, the ownership. So my view is right and correct for me. Your view may be different. It's correct for you, but it's not correct for me. So it's already setting up the possibility of grasping, craving, for, against, liking, not liking. And this is what we're starting to unravel as we meditate. So a view can be there, but you don't hold too tightly. You notice how when you hold tightly, it starts to hurt in one way or another. Whenever it's challenged, or it can be challenged by another person, but sometimes it's just nature challenges your view. My body. You don't need another person to challenge that view. You just wait. and pain comes up in your legs, and you feel tired, and sometimes you get hungry, and you feel sick. You get old every day, and one day you must die. Nature does the job of challenge your view that you own this body all by itself. You don't need anyone else to do it. But still, we add on to the already difficult thing of living with a human body, getting older, by taking ownership of it, and then comparing with others and competing with others. So my body is better than yours. We identify with our gender, our age, our ethnic background, our cultural background. So it's already hard enough just having a body, and then we add to the burden, the problem, by attaching to the way we look. So much of our thinking is just based on what we see in other people, what we like. When we see what we like, we're happy. When we see what we don't like, we find it even repulsive, or certainly something you don't want, you push away. And the self-view is always forming around this body. But it's a delusion, so the Buddha said, question it, look at it more closely. And you come to a new understanding of the body is just this way, it's just the way it is. Even if it looks good, if you're fortunate to have a good-looking body, whatever that means, because everyone has a different opinion on it, but if it looks good, feels good, is healthy, well, that's your good fortune. But it changes, it's impermanent. And there's no one making that happen. It goes according to causes and conditions. And we can speed up change, of course. We influence it by our own actions, what we do with this body. But even if you just sat down and waited for the end of your life, your body would be changing quite automatically, because it goes according to causes and conditions. And nobody can stop the fact that it's changing as causes and conditions change. Because of that, it's dukkha. You eat the best food that you can get, and then you digest it, and then you've got to get the waste out, and then you've got to find more food. That goes on every day, doesn't it? If you don't eat, eventually you will waste away. We are subject to illness and injury. Not just COVID, any other kind of illness can happen, even without COVID in the world. There's thousands of other illnesses can affect us, thousands of ways we can meet with injury and accident, because the body is fragile, it's impermanent, it's dukkha. You just get a little graze, and a little bit of skin comes off, and the pain can be intense. And if you expose your pain to other things, the graze where the skin has come off, it's intolerable. And the Buddha, in his wisdom, having developed very refined states of samadhi and observed this, he said, well, even ordinary sense contact is actually a little bit painful in its nature. That's why you get tired even when you're enjoying yourself. You can't enjoy the things you like all the time. The pleasure wears out and it becomes tiring. Sense impingement is tiring for a human body. There's nobody who makes that happen. We influence it. We try to get as much pleasure as we can and avoid pain as much as we can. But it's just nature. Pleasure is impermanent. It's dukkha. It's constantly changing, falling away. If the condition's not right, we can't get it back again. But in its nature, it's impermanent, it's dukkha, and it's not self. That just pleasure arises when the conditions are right. We say, I get my pleasure, I do this to get my pleasure. But actually, it's a set of causes and conditions, and you can't just command it. If we could, we'd just have pleasure all day long, wouldn't we? And we try to do that. If we're in the position, we just try to get everything how we like it, but we're always being defeated because it's a conditioned realm we live in. The world is impermanent. Nothing lasts. It changes. So it's dukkha, and it's not self, because you can't control it or own it. And when you have the view owning your pleasure, well, then it sets up suffering, doesn't it? The fear of losing it, the sadness of losing it, the anticipation of when you're going to get it back again, the expectation, the anticipation, the wanting, the craving, and then you get it and it doesn't last. The cycles of life are like this, aren't they? We're constantly trying to get away from the pain, get more pleasure, and nothing works in the long run. Ultimately, nothing works, because craving can never lead to perfect satisfaction of mind. You know, in one period of meditation, you can see this going on all the time. It's a microcosm of life, of the world. Your mind darts from one thought to another, one feeling to another, one memory to another. We link them all together. You know, the reason we don't see not self, anatta, is because it's all linked together. It seems like there's one person in charge, owning it all, in control. And that's why we suffer. You know, the more you try to control, the more you suffer, because ultimately these things are not under anybody's control. They're not a being, a person, mine, yours, us and them, us or them. Thoughts are thoughts. Thoughts are merely thoughts. Feelings are merely feelings. The body is merely the body. These are the kind of insights that grow the more you practice. And this becomes a refuge in Dhamma, seeing the truth, seeing the Dhamma. Not simply idealizing and hoping and believing. You know, it may be like that in the beginning, but you're actually coming to know this is the way it is. And when that clear knowing arises, you let go, don't you? You let go of the wrong view of seeing it as a self under your ownership. And it's a relief. When you let go of a wrong view, your mind fills up with the right view, and it's peaceful because of understanding. And it's very difficult for external conditions to dislodge your right view once it's established. Even if you meet other people with totally different views and say, oh, it's all wrong, what you practice is wrong, what you do is wrong. Well, those are just words. If you've experienced some insight into anicca, dukkha, anatta yourself, you can still listen to the words of others and appreciate if there's any wisdom or truth in them, but they can't knock you out of that insight because it's happened. Once you know, don't you? Once you know something, you've experienced it, you're not in doubt anymore. This is the value of repeated meditation, because when you repeat something, you really get to know it and see it. And so there's less and less room for delusion, wrong views, misunderstanding. And the real peace in our heart comes from understanding the way things are, seeing and knowing the way things are. Even the peace that we get from samadhi, states of piti, rapture, joy. If you have a refuge, you know even those come and go. Because they're conditions, again. Ultimately, nobody controls or owns the bliss of samadhi, the joy of helping someone, giving something to someone. These things come from causes and conditions. And you have to accept them. They pass. So Sometimes the mind is very peaceful and blissful. Sometimes it's not. But wisdom says this is the way it is. It's impermanent. It's not self. And truly seeing the way things are doesn't mean to say you don't value doing good or meditating or helping people simply because you know it's not that you see, oh, it's just temporary. It's not like that. You still do these things that are good and worthwhile because they do help you on your path, and they help others. They're correct things to do. Often people, practicing vipassana, they do get to this sort of stage where they're seeing everything as impermanent, not to be attached to, not to be clung to, and then they fall into a kind of depression or sadness. You can't really help it. It will come up probably. So if you're seeing everything in this world, physical or mental, is temporary, not to be clung to, it's a very sobering experience, and you might well have sense of sadness, disappointment. We use the word disenchantment. Once you've seen through the conjurer's trick, then it's like it. There's no more interest or entertainment value in it because you've seen through it. When you're new, you think it's glamorous and impressive. It fascinates you, and you're impressed. So you think about it, talk about it, get it stimulated by it. But then when you've contemplated anicca dukkha anatta, it's stripping off all those layers of delusion to the point where it's just that, nothing much. But what you have to remember is the mind that sees that is in a very good place. It's peaceful, it's clear, it's undiluted. That's a form of happiness. It's better than the happiness of sensual experience, say. It's better than the happiness of, even than the happiness of just a peaceful state of mind in samadhi. The highest happiness is the unconditioned, the mind of the unconditioned. Nati santi paramang sukhang, the mind that is with the unconditioned, unattached, we say unborn, uncreated, that's letting go of self, or has let go of self. That's why teachers like Ajahn Chah can seem so at ease when they just say, oh, just let it go. Somebody's suffering over something, what somebody else said, or some mistake that was made, or your health problems. Go and see Ajahn Chah, and he just says, oh, just let go. It's a small thing. He can say that because he's practiced to that level, and his mind is just at peace with the world. It's not grasping at the world as a self. His mind is seeing the unconditioned in all things, experiencing that. As you're practicing towards it, you may have glimpses of it, but the mind still forgets its refuge, forgets the Dhamma, and starts building up the sense of self in experience again. And of course that leads to more suffering and confusion. But little by little, if you keep practicing and you're willing to keep practicing, then that mind brightens and the clarity brings insight. All things are impermanent, all things are suffering, all Dhammas are not self. So even the Dhamma of Nibbana is not self, it's not a person. So maybe for this morning I'll leave you with these reflections and we can carry on practicing.